McNair gives it to George, running right up the middle. Touchdown! Titan! There are no flags on the field! It's a miracle!
Safety, now you're one-on-one with it.
Shows why he's the man! In trouble. Sack!
Ladies and gentlemen, Titan Nation, welcome back to another episode. Today, my special guest is the Oilers/Titans strength and conditioning coach, the legend himself, Steve Watterson. How are you doing today, Coach?
Great to see you, Alex. I'm very blessed. I turned 68 today, so yeah.
Well, happy birthday! That's an honor that you're even taking your time. I'm glad that you're good.
Yeah.
And you don't look a day over 68, man. You look like you could.
I hope. At least I look my age, and I'm blessed to have been able to walk away after 21 surgeries during my career. Yeah,
I mean, if no one knows, I mean, everyone that's a Titan fan should know, but if you don't, the longest tenured NFL assistant coach working for the same team, 32 years.
Yeah, consecutive years. I set the NFL record.
That is,
Yes.
but that just shows you, in this day and age, how many people, how many coaches come in and out of the league, how many get fired, it's just so much going on. Yet it just shows you what type of hard work you had and the trust the team had with you, the relationship with the players. Like I've said, I've talked to a lot of players, and when I mentioned I've got Coach Watterson, they flipped out. Like I said, Albert Hainsworth, he quote tweeted my Instagram. I talk to Albert quite often, and he put, "That's my coach." Justin McCarron's was like, "Hey, tell Coach I said hi." And again, Justin lives over here in Texas, so I do see him quite often. He said he wanted to say hello, so it just shows you, man, the impact you have on these players.
Interesting, those guys, because they were definitely quality players, incredibly talented, great human beings. In fact, Justin McCarron's, the story with him is it really hurt me, but he came. I talked to his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of my philosophies with all of my athletes, when they came into the team originally, and I said, I'm unlike practically any other coach. My value is to hopefully help you with your longevity in the league, help you perform better than you ever thought you could perform. So I would like you to be with us forever. But if the fact of the matter is, if you play for me, I get to work with you, and you get an offer from another team that's so much higher than our team's willing, I still did my job. I want you to increase your value. And I still remember him coming and talking to me with his parents. And he got an offer to go to the Jets.
Yeah.
And he didn't really want to go, because he had really loved it here, the team in Nashville. And I remember telling him, I said, I don't want to betray my team, but I can't be untrue to of what's best for you. That offer that you're getting, knowing that the team could not match at that point because we were cap loaded, you have to go. You have to go. You're here to perform for the team, whatever team you're on, but this is a career for you. And I hated seeing him leave, but he was just a great, hardworking young player.
Definitely. Justin McCarron's, man, again, it's real, super nice guy. Like I said, we talked, and he went to the police force after, and then he came back. He came back to the Titans.
So he did.
There you go. That must have been a nice little welcome back, right?
Awesome.
I think a good way to kind of start this podcast, kind of start this, is basically finding out what a strength and conditioning coach, what's their job entail. Some people don't know, I think.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Fact is, during my career, it's really morphed. It's changed. What a strength coach does now versus what he used to do. Uh, it's mitigated on even rules and regulations of the league. It's
Mhm.
really different. Um, when I started in the league, I'm going to age myself here. Uh, People know that I was with 32 and a half years with the
There's-
I just knew it was time to retire. Um, I was 2 years before that with the Eagles, but I actually started in 1978 as an intern with the Philadelphia Eagles. You remember the movie Invincible?
Yep, with Vincent
Papali?
Alley. Yep.
That was my first year as an intern. Incredible year. Dick Vermeil. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It was a different era, and you talk about the time that was invested. We didn't have all this high tech,
Mhm.
technology. Matter of fact, when I first got to the team, I can remember at nighttime, my room in the stadium, Veterans Stadium, was right next to Dick Vermeil's film room in the off season, and I would hear 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Wow.
The 8 millimeter film, and I guess it was 12 millimeter back then, and you would hear him just putting in these incredible hours. And back then, it was much more smaller staffs, a lot more responsibilities, and you had the athletes in the off season because there wasn't a lot of extra jobs, and the money was such that the athletes had to really work in the off season to maintain that type of condition. And things just evolved over the years, and the job has changed. The strength and conditioning coach, during my tenure, and I'm just going to give you an example of exposure to the athletes.
Okay.
Um, in the old days, athletes weren't paid to work out in the off season.
Hmm.
They came whenever they could to maintain conditioning, to be able to perform. But some of them needed an extra job, whether they were doing an internship at a bank or whether they were, some guys even went to flip burgers. Some of them needed extra income. And by the 87, after that first big strike, or second big strike, then the salaries really boosted up. And so our exposure with the athletes went from regular but intermittent work in the early years, and I'm talking about in the early 80s, to, it's pretty mandated. By the time I got to the teams, and especially to the Oilers in 86, we had programs. I worked with Jerry Glanville, and he wanted those players there every day. We took attendance. We actually paid the players. I think it was only like $25 a day. And then it boosted to $100 a day to work out, and very sophisticated routines. And to give you an example, and I just lectured to a whole group of orthopedic surgeons, and they wanted to know the comparison of what I talked about exposure to the athletes. I said, I had those athletes 2 days in the off season. They'd lift in the afternoon, and some would run in the morning, and then vice versa, depending on which group they were in. But they actually had breaks between. Guys would run out and get sandwiches. And in the off season, my off season program, this goes back into 1986, 48-week program. Now, not the off season, total year.
Mm-hmm.
They got two weekends, 2 weeks off when the season ended to recover, rest and recover, we call that. And then they had 2 weeks to taper and prepare their body for the season. So 2 weeks before the preseason reporting. Now, if you were going to a wedding, or if you were going to graduation, or you had some other things, then I always expected my guys to say, okay, I'll take it out of those 4 weeks. And so they would come right back because they knew they were going to be missing some time. But it was very intense. I mean, our programs from building mass muscle and healing in the early part. But then it changed depending on what position they played, specificity, all those things significantly involved. But even when the union got involved, let me plug this in. Even when the Players Association got involved, and they whittled us down from the off season down to from 26 weeks down to 16.
Oh wow.
16 weeks. And then it go into 9.
And just kept
It's even different. I mean, they micronized to how many hours the guy can be in the building. And there's no mandating. And the reality is this: the strength coach today, and I'm going to jump all the way forward from very sophisticated, time-intensive training with the athletes, and they do it on their own now, when they have all these personal training facilities, which in itself is a unique paradigm. We can discuss that. Is the strength coach literally has the athlete 8 days.
Wow.
Makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
But just take a look how that works. Until from the end of the season until the start of the off season, usually a designated time, April, that is the players' time off. They can come in and use the facility. You only have 2 responsibilities. You can't design specific routines for them. You're there to supervise and prevent injuries.
That's it.
You're not supposed to even be giving them specific programs, which we did, but you're not supposed to.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so when the players report back, team's a little different. Most teams allow 2 weeks of adaptation. You're with the strength coach. That's 8 days because they're only there 4 days a week. In the old days, I had players there 5 days a week. But Wednesday was kind of the nebulous day. If you had something to do, you could skip that because we did split routines: Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. And now you report, an athlete reports, and they're literally there for 2 weeks with the strength coach, 4 days a week, 4 hours a day. And then they go into on the field with the coaches. Strength coach does get time with them, but it's carved out of the 4 hours. So if you got to be there, you got to meet special teams meetings, position meetings, offense, defense meetings, head coach meeting on the field. How much do you really think is left out of 4 hours?
Maybe pushing 30 minutes, maybe less.
And they're not even supposed to be in the building. It's not like, oh, well, it's optional. They're supposed to be out of that building in X amount of hours.
Wow.
Now, they do expand it during a certain little phase, but the time is minimal. Matter of fact, I was so frustrated in talking to some of the league officials at the end of my career. I actually talked to some young players, and they said, well, how do we have the longevity you had? I said, first of all, it's going to be difficult because staffs always want to hire their people. Staffs do change. I was blessed at 7 different head coaches. The fact of the matter is, going for 30 years shouldn't be your goal. Your goal be a professional strength coach that knows how to get athletes ready. And then wherever the teams have an opening, you would be available. So it has changed. I said, but the difference is, I said, pull out your card. And I had all these young strength coaches pull out their business cards.
Okay.
Some said, assistant to the sports performance director. Some said human performance. Some said assistant strength coach. Some said head of technologies. I said, you can take all your cards, tear them up, put them in a ball. You know what it says? You are a fitness monitor. And I knew some really took umbrage to it. And I tried to explain to them, the fact is, what impact are you really having in developing all of the fitness components, looking at an athlete, looking at where they need to increase, where their weaknesses, not their strengths are, and then really have a while, long term, to develop our strength, to develop speed and agility, to develop some coordination, develop whatever weakness you were able to uncover. Well, how do you do that in basically 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Now, every team tries to work their way around it to some extent. I had my secret, and I'll tell you, now that I'm out of the league, at the end of the season, all the I knew needed special work, a lot of them, I would say sign. When you sign out, sign that some injury isn't resolved. Tell them your shoulder still hurts. Tell them your thumb never got healed from training camp. Whatever it is on that paper. And that would allow me to work with you because I'm getting you fully recovered from something that happened during this season.
Nice.
I can remember having a phone conversation with one of the league officials, and it was about my opinion on my tenure allowed me to give my opinion every now and then on a league position, and they always didn't like mine. But one of the league officials asked, "How did you always have this attendance? We look at the reports, and how did you have these guys? And even before the allocated time, just taking care of the guys that are injured." And I was fortunate because I actually started with athletic trainers. I was certified as an athletic trainer. That's where my career started. So I always maintained that.
Gotcha.
So my latitude was wider than a lot of my peers to have exposure to my athletes. But the profession has definitely changed.
Definitely.
And so much of it now is monitoring during the game, how much recovery, the hydration, and these are important variables. But the ability to change the morphology, the size, the percent body fat, maybe increase a specific fitness component of the athlete has really been diminished.
So, in one way, it's not beneficiary at all to the athletes of today, correct?
I don't think so personally. You ask them, of course, they love their free time.
Of course.
How are you going to spend that money if you don't have time to spend it? So, which I think is great. Athletes are getting paid what they're willing to sacrifice in the intensity. And the game has changed. I mean, genetics, and I've lectured on this, and you will never beat great genetics. But show me a marginal player that's coachable and willing to work, they'll supersede even. I'll give you an example. A guy that you mentioned earlier, phenomenal genetics.
Ainsworth.
One of the most incredible, explosive. Not many men have come through my doors with that size and that explosive. And you're just not going to beat that.
Yeah. He was one scary guy.
Oh. Yeah. You know him now off the field. Is he not one of the fun, great
Yeah.
all around buddy? He'd be the guy you want to go have a beer with. On the field, one of the most powerful, explosive athletes to play the game.
Definitely 100%. Well, coach, we could talk about the Eagles. Let's talk a little bit about your time with the Oilers, how you got that gig, all that team when you first got there, and then we can kind of break down, because like you said, 7 coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coaches and just the Titans era of football, because you've been in every single era for the Titans football.
Well, I got there in 84 and 85. I was with the Eagles. 86, rough year. And obviously for the Eagles. And I had an opportunity to go to the Houston Oilers. Jerry Glanville, the man in black, was looking for a specific type of strength coach because the injury rate was off the chart for the Oilers. And he wasn't very impressed at all with their fitness level because Jerry, before becoming the head coach in 86, was an assistant coach and a defensive coordinator. And so he knew that was he told me, he said, that's going to be the first big change I made. And it would be a podcast in itself for me to go through that interview process. Very few people had to go through the process I went with Jerry Glanville. Oh my gosh. Fun, exciting, but very specific on what he wanted and expected out of the position. I still remember getting set up and ESPN came in for the interview.
Wow.
And so all the coaches that have all been hired, I'm the last guy. And they're all sat there in the room and got the cameras set up. When Glanville walks in, and half the cameras were focused on me. And Glanville walked in, said, "Oh, no, we don't need any cameras on him. I don't even know if I'm hiring this guy. Put them all on us."
Like,
wow. Already, you're being put in your place. But everything he asked and all the excitement and I remember going to lunch with him in his car, and he's driving 100 miles an hour to wherever we had to go, whether it was going to a meeting with the owner or going off to find a place to eat lunch. And he's still that way, coaching to this day. Jerry Glanville, 80-some years of age, is still kicking butt. So that era, he really wanted to change things. Mm-hmm. And so I came in, he called a team meeting in March, and believe me, it was an eye-opener for a lot of the players, because until then, it really was kind of like a spar. Guys came in, did what they wanted, worked out whatever they wanted, whatever body parts they wanted, no evaluations, no postseason evaluation, no preseason testing. It really was, it was a spa. Might as well go down to Cancun.
Do you think that was the key to all the injuries?
It was definitely one of them, because I can remember going in there and, the team did, obviously guys back in those days, everybody wanted to bench press. So it was a bench press Monday every day. Guys would walk in with silk sweatsuits. Do you remember the old starter sweatsuit?
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're going out to the club or coming in to work out. And from the first day, I changed all the rules. Everybody's going to dress out. You're going to be in grays, or you're going to be in team-issued sweats. And when we come here, you're going to have a workout. The workout was to match what your evaluation was. Now, when I started the evaluations, everybody was like wide-eyed. Like, what the heck is this? Because I made all the guys strip down into nothing but remember the old gray tight shorts, cotton shorts from the combine?
Uh-huh.
They had to strip down nothing but a pair of shorts. Oh boy, the little scrawny guys were all like inhibited, and we had some scrawny kids. And then all the significantly overweight guys would be in those things, and they had and they would sit one-on-one, and they would look in the mirror, and we talk all the scores, all the things they've done, go through every single past injury. What are their goals? What do they need? And most of the guys were so untouched. Like a guy that was already a 500 plus pound squatter said, I want to hit that 600 mark. Well, that was fine. And I'm not saying we can't get you there, but you can't bench your body weight, your scores. That is not realistic to your performance. And then we had some guys that, I mean, literally, they would stand there in front of you and their upper body looked like Hercules and their lower body was Chicken Little.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you ever done a squat? And then getting in there and having to reteach the proper mechanics. So many of the mechanics were so off. I still remember one of the players. I won't sell him out, but a player that came and played in the Super Bowl and a significant role getting us to that Super Bowl run. When he came to us from a major university, he told me how much he squatted. I remember looking at him and said, you get to know what a guy can lift.
Yeah.
Remember him telling me what he can lift. I said, well, okay, let's go through the first steps. I still expect 135 warm up because I want to watch mechanics. And then I remember saying, we'll go 225, we'll go 350, and we're going to work all the way up because you said you can squat 450. He never got past 185. The mechanics were so off. I went, oh my gosh, it says right here in your history how many times you've had low back injuries.
There you go.
There's the correlation. It took us a full year. He was with us for several years just to get him to be able to get to 225 correctly. So mechanics was so important to me to make that doing it correctly allowed proper gains, good strong base, and really eliminated the potential for injury. And so going through all that early phase with these athletes and getting to adjust. Another one that was an interesting story was the first time we get to an away game. I've been there off season. We went to training camp and I get the meal plans because I also did all the nutritional and dietary provisions for the athletes.
Okay.
The old menu, this is 86 now.
Okay.
So at least they were able to take off Diana Ball. The athletes took their own steroids. And not everybody. I don't overplay that. But there were some athletes, obviously, that abused before testing. But the pregame meal actually had steak, pork chops, fried eggs. I was stunned. There was enough bacon on there to eat the entire NFL. And chocolate cake and ice cream before the game. And so seeing that right away, no, we erase this. I mean, I took a Sharpie and a pen, and then we're changing all that. And the first time the athletes show up for breakfast, for the veterans especially, we're like, where's the regular pregame? And instead, we had everything from oatmeal, we had whole grain pancakes, we did have waffles, we had some scrambled eggs, I had grilled chicken, shredded grilled chicken. I mean, we had morphed. And I remember there being such a revolt.
Oh God,
that was the second revolt. The first revolt happened 1 month after I got to the team in '86. I heard 13 players, and this was from the old GM, Lad Herzig, had gone to him and said, no, this guy, fire him. If you don't know what he's expecting us to do, come back twice, and all of these workouts and how hard he's pushing us, yelling at us. And I'm sure I said a lot of stuff that's politically correct. That was a different era.
Yeah, definitely.
To this day, I'm so appreciative for some of the veteran players, especially Warren Moon, who Lad talked to. I said, hey, what's going on? Is problem with the strength coach? Warren goes, no problem. He's making them. Now, he had he had set or got near setting the record for getting sacked the year before.
Okay.
He goes, "Lad, I'm tired of getting beat up. This is exactly what we need." And so, and working with someone like Warren, for your fans out there, you got to understand. Warren Moon, strong, he bench 350, probably still can. Oh yeah, threw it up, boom. 400 plus squat, boom. 275 clean. I mean, he was an amazingly strong quarterback. Everybody talks about how beautiful he threw the ball, and really was like poetry in motion. But he was an incredibly athletic and really, really powerful, strong and powerful athlete. So that's the first revolt. The second revolt was obviously with the meals, and I get called in, and we did have to make some minor compromises, especially since the old GM, one of my great friends, Floyd Reese. Floyd goes, "I know one thing that's going back on that menu," and he was a coach, back then. And he goes, "Steve, you got to put bacon on." I have a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich before every game. All right, guys, we'll add a couple of things back in there, but understand, we got to change things. I mean, guys smoking on the sideline, smoking at halftime. No.
That's wild.
How about some peanut butter and jelly? How about some oranges? How about so? Yeah, there was definitely an adjustment, them to me and me to realizing what the athletes, the compromise.
Now, when they finally transition, right? You made the transition from the Houston Oilers to the Titans and stuff, and they moved to Nashville and stuff. You worked obviously under Jeff Fisher. How was your relationship with Coach Fisher?
He's it's hard for me to put into words other than to say that when I lecture to sometimes hospitals, groups, I'll call a view from the middle. And what it is, I go in and take a look at an organization and their hierarchy. And I say, I don't have the qualities. I don't have the qualifications to ever be a head coach. But I became the assistant head coach. And I was also hired as just the strength coach. And I was an assistant athletic trainer when I first got in the league. So I've seen things from different levels. And so when I go in, I talk to businesses. What do the people above, all the way through to upper management, really think of you, the hierarchy? What you think they think may not be the true story, because you have buffers all the way through. When I coached for Jerry Glanville, it was wild, wild west. And he wanted it that way. Believe me, he wanted players to play beyond anything they thought they could play, like renegades. I still remember this happening. Floyd Reese was the linebacker coach before he became the general manager. And a player, one of our linebackers, crushes one of their players out of bounds. In the white, get the flag. And Floyd is ripping him. And Jerry Glanville jumped on Floyd, pulled him off, says, "You coach between the white lines. I coach out of bounds."
Oh,
So it was a whole thing. He goes, Jerry remember in a meeting saying, "To me, guys, white's in bounds."
wow.
So that's one style of let's get behind them. It's the cavalry. And then we got Jack Pardee. Do you remember Jack?
Yep.
Great for the Oil. But very aloof. Jack thought everybody played the game the way he saw the game. Everything. Be the smartest. Be the hottest player. Never miss a game. Never miss a play. It's not about whether you're winning and losing. It's about, wow, just getting to play in the league. And he didn't realize that the players weren't like that. When conditions got bad and the team was down in the scores, they kind of tapped out.
Yeah.
Well, now we can get all the way through these different coaches. We get to Jeff. Jeff got it. Incredible. How he was able to change the culture of the organization, the team. He let every person he hired do their job. You prove to me you can't do it, and I'll change you. He never liked to change his staff. He was very loyal to him. He would help you get your job done any way he could. He would support you any way he can because he really valued every single person's role in the organization. The equipment guy, the assistant equipment guy, the janitor. He engaged to everybody. And he wanted to make you know you're worthy, you're valued. And him as a head coach, he believed it was his job to make your job easier to get done. And so that whole era, it was such a family dynamics, and people really enjoyed the atmosphere. Oh, we had some up and down times, and some of that was roster, some of it was up. Obviously, coach making the wrong call, wrong time, wrong place, but he was awesome to work on.
Definitely. Now, dealing with talking about, some of the players you've worked with and got to coach. I mean, Steve McNair, right? Steve McNair had a kind of a history, right, of being hurt most of the time and still playing, missing practice, and then playing Sunday. How often did you work with him, and what's the most of the things that were troubling Steve at the time with injuries?
I love McNair, loved him as a person. We had, do you ever see the cartoon Foghorn, Leghorn?
No.
The check-in with the sheepdog and the rooster. And outside work, they were good buddy, but inside it was always conflict. Steve and I were always in conflict. Steve always had somebody that was able to rescue him. Athletic trainers, maybe a doctor, even his position coach, even Jeff at times, because I wanted to be high demanding. And they were like, listen, this is the one thing Steve hates to do. He hates having to report the Monday of lifting weights, train, losing weight. And here I was in the middle because the GM would want to know what he weighed, and sometimes he would get an exception. No, don't worry, Steve. He's had some stuff he's going through, or he's on a medication that's causing him to hold a little bit more weight. And I'm like, no, he still has to comply. And I'll be honest, I get the rug pulled out from underneath me a few times. So it was obviously, of all the athletes, Albert was a little challenge. Been on regularly to lift and train. But Steve was, and I do think that contributed to his injury rate because we didn't take care of his tissue. Philosophically, for all the young strength coaches or professionals out there that are hearing me talk, anytime I dealt with an athlete from the beginning of the off season, so a season ends, it was building programs and helping them get to high performance were based on three important variables: tissue quality, the health of the tissue in your body. Then we had to get tissue position. Can your body move in such a way that it can complete all of the demands of the position that you play? The tissue performance. Can it metabolically? Can it explosively? Can it endurance-wise, agility-wise, fitness component-wise, complete at a high level all the things that are in your demand? Well, anytime you don't get to address all these things or you skip steps, it gets exposed. And it did with Steve. That's why he was injured so frequently. it brought such angst to me because I loved the guy.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, we had a great relationship outside of what my expectation was. Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
Uh, now I'll relay one funny story. If I ever write a book, it'll definitely be in it. Um, I get a demand from the GM saying Steve's overweight. I said, I agree with you, but he's been from weighing in for a while. This is remember he had this crushed sternum
Yeah.
from playing, I believe it was Baltimore, Saragusa.
Mhm.
And so I get the rug pulled out. Listen, I told him he doesn't have to weigh in for a little bit. It's really getting to his head. So let's just back off. Otherwise, we're really going to lose him mentally. The GM said, I don't care. I want to know what his weight is. Is he being fined? Is he being held accountable?
Mhm.
ESPN is doing a special in the bubble where we practice.
Of course they would.
There's a white screen hanging down, and there was going to be a picture taken with him and Eddie George, and there were X's where they were going to stand. I ran in while they were in meetings. I took the scale apart. So the platform wasn't connected to the post and laid the post behind the screen. And the lady told me, where they were going to be standing. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, it's only about that much higher. When Steve comes in, tell me he has to stand there. And it's for the photo shoot. But he has to stand right on that thing. And so sure enough, I heard they were let out of meetings. I run in and I get behind the curtain in the bubble.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden she goes, nope, you have to be right here. And she stands him right on it. And I remember screaming, gotcha. Matt didn't talk to me for a week. He knew I got him. Oh, Matt. But he was definitely,
Overweight.
but he was a very unique athlete. And he is one of the reasons why I used to think outside of the box training wise. If you did something that was competitive, if you did something that was more based on skill, something to do with football, things that were circuit movement, he would do that. But getting in there and just old fashioned movements, weight training, a lot of therapy on the shoulder, he wasn't going to do that. So I actually designed a game uh, uh, called Powerball, and it was a unique game that conditioned the athletes. It was spatial awareness, and those guys would play that. We actually had guys in the off season have to get IVs. They trained so hard doing it. It was competitively. It was like basketball outside. And then I remember when he had the shoulder injuries, we developed kind of like a handball game,
Mm-hmm.
and players would play that on the side wall. I made like a tennis net drawn on a wall, and they had to throw it against the wall. Partners had to go get it, and it really worked endurance, a lot of explosive change of direction movements, and I could get Matt to play that all game, all day. But just go out there and run sprints. That wasn't his.
Interesting. It's interesting. And obviously you find ways to go around that, right? Where if an athlete is not complying or doesn't like to, like I said, doesn't like to do conditioning and stuff, you kind of have to find your way about that, right?
Oh yeah, but then I ended up like I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
So after Jeff came Mike Munchak,
Mm-hmm.
Hall of Famer. Who's on his Bruce Matthews, Hall of Famer. I coached them from very early in their career. So they knew what my expectation was. They saw the benefits of the things that I had done. I got incredible support from them. And so it wasn't even in question because a player couldn't go complain to Mike. Mike said, you can come with me to me with any issue.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, and he shake his head. He goes, good. That's my strength coach. Go do what he says to do. Guys would back out, come back to me. They'd be so frustrated. I said, what did Mike say? Nothing. Just
Just
I have a pretty good idea what he said. Let's get to work. So yeah.
Now, was that the best time? Because I know you and Mike Munchak were very, very close.
Yeah.
Day that he was hired as the Tennessee Titans coach, how was that feeling? How was your relationship with Mike?
But it was hard. It was hard. Seeing Jeff leave was hard.
Mhm.
We had 13 years together. He was like family.
Yeah.
But it couldn't have been a better situation to have the guy who's godfather to my oldest son,
Oh
uh,
wow.
a guy to this day, every single day. We share Bible verses with Bruce Matthews as well. And we
That's
have other offensive linemen, Zach Pillar, crazy Zach. So we've maintained that relationship. But when he became the head coach, I honestly believe we were maybe one or two injuries or one game away from him completing a change, a Munchak culture, and he just wasn't given. I don't think he was given enough time to get it done because he was so fastidious about every detail in every part of the organization. And like Jeff, Mike really saw his role as someone that was to help you do the best job you can do to have the athletes perform at the highest level. It didn't matter if it was someone in business and someone in HR, if it meant the player development, if it was equipment, trainer, it didn't matter. They were making an environment, a winning environment, and it just got cut too short.
Do you think with Mike coming in, do you think there was, and that was one of the things that was kind of like a bummer too, because he's been with the team. I mean, he played for the Oilers, then he was the coach for that long, then getting the head coach positioning, and then losing his job. Kind of, he he kind of lost his tenure with the Titans, the organization itself. Because after that, he went with the Steelers and stuff. Um, it sucks that it happens like that, right? That kind of like once you hit the head coaching and once that's done, I mean, it's very rare that a coach will go back with the same team almost, right?
Oh, and Mike's nickname, especially to our inner group,
Hmm.
the linemen and the guys that were really close, he was Johnny O. Johnny Oiler. Johnny Oiler. Guy, he'd be walking in if something good happened, Johnny O. And oh my gosh, he was the Oiler.
Yeah.
So whenever that went down, and I'm not gonna throw this on anybody else.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you my personal opinion.
Okay.
I truly believe there were people in management that
Mhm.
were truly intimidated by Mike's prowess, attention to detail, attention to accountability. He was much tougher on people equal with him
Mhm.
that we're all doing our job to help everybody below, where I think people parallel to them
Mhm.
thought we reign on high with Mike. And those are our doobies. Those are the worker bees. And
Mhm.
I looked at it like that. But Mike would hold his people, whether it be in personnel, the general manager, someone in business. He had high, high standards for those. And I think, and even the interim owner, I think he really not intimidated, but he really um, holding them accountable was tough on them. And so it didn't work. But look what happened. He went. Sure enough, next team, best line again. Next team, he's like the assistant head coach, and he's the best line again. I mean, he just made an impact wherever he went.
Definitely. Now, throughout, like you said, your career with the Tennessee Titans, you've been through like eras, the Jeff Fisher era, Mike Munchak. You kind of saw the organization as a whole. kind of changed. There was moments where this organization kind of didn't know where it was going, and it was struggling. Would you say what era that was in your opinion where it was struggling, where maybe the GM didn't see fit, maybe it was, upper management, maybe it was the coaching staff where you're like, yeah, like you can feel the change and feel this team being different from last year's or previous ones.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of years that just stood out. I mean, coming off the '93 era, that
Uh-huh.
goes to Houston, and I really think we had the best team in the NFL. This is during that Buddy Ryan punch. I mean, we had some crazy thing, buddy. I'm talking about, oh,
You don't
North
see that anymore, huh?
North Dallas 40 had nothing on South Texas Oilers. I mean, there was some wild events. And so we had a very, very, very talented team running the running gun, started out as a run and shoot. It was a different fun. You talk about exciting, fun times.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, when things were bad and someone had your number, those, those little 150-pound receivers got the butts whooped. And other times,
Mhm.
we just had, I mean, we were on a roll. But then '94, it really went through that difficult time at the end of Jack Valdez and losing the AFC. I mean, we were going into the AFC Championship, but one game prior to that, we lose to one of the greatest losses ever
It was bad.
against Buffalo. So that was a rough year in transition. And I will be honest with you, Mr. Adams was the owner. I've had full respect for him, but sometimes he would get involved and change the apple cart, and he. I still remember getting in and be sitting in meetings, and I was always smart and don't talk unless someone asks me a question. But
Mhm.
there, and all of a sudden, maybe the GM, maybe the head coach, maybe they're together, they were on the same page, would say, "But Mr. Adams, we think this is what's needed." And he would keep pushing back, and finally he'd say, "No, you know who owns the team?
Mm.
Okay, then we just moved on to the next topic." But teams that were able to really manage their caps,
Mhm.
Dallas did a phenomenal job. Look at what the Patriots were always able to do it. Some teams just really never had to go with this total reorganization like we did 2004. I mean, all of a sudden, we just knew that the whole thing was just top heavy and we knew we were going to go to rebuilding. And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't want to admit that. But other times you're just painted into a corner and you can't get out, and you just have to say, "Hey guys, we're in a rebuild. We're going to have to release this contract, that contract. We're so top loaded, you just don't have the funds."
Mhm.
And that's why some teams get really down the road in trouble because they keep passing their debt off down to the 3, 4, 5 years ahead. But believe me, when the Reaper comes calling and those contracts and money's up or injuries occur. So 2004 was tough. I think 2000, I always say 94, 2004, 2014. I mean, they've just been some difficult years.
That was with Ken Wesenhunt, no? Or no? 2014 was
What
who?
team was the end of Wiz during that?
Oh no, it wasn't. It wasn't Ken. Ken Wesenhunt was 2007 to 2012.
No,
No,
no, no.
he was. It was 2015 was his last year.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a tough thing. And Ken, I feel bad because Ken is a really good guy, but he got caught in a roster that just didn't feed the needs of a coaching staff.
And that's basically what I had Jason McCourty on, and he kind of explained.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh my! One of my favorite players of all time.
J Max awesome.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and then he's. I mean, look at him now. Doing his own thing.
Ask him some stories about Powerball.
Powerball.
Powerball. I mean that. Ask him because he was during that era where guys. When I said, "Guys, I'm only allowed to be on the field with you for an hour,"
Uh-huh.
Now we're pushing out, and they'd be like, "Fine, coach, go. We're finishing this game. We're not leaving tied. We're ending this." And they out. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard worker, great human being.
Yeah, he's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, he was talking about, Ken Wisenhunt, and just he had, I think his philosophy didn't fit. I think that's what he said, that the issue was not the team. It was just like what he wanted to implement the team didn't have that.
That's exactly it.
Right.
It wasn't just that we didn't, it's not like we had a great roster for another team,
Mhm.
is we didn't have a great roster at that point. We had some great players like Jason. But we had pieces that would fit and pulled in and free agency, and it wasn't a long-term gel situation.
Yeah, overall. And then obviously, like from the perspective of a fan, everyone's like, oh, Ken Wisenhunt, oh yeah, it's there. But obviously, if you dive into it a little bit more, listen to players, listen to the coaches, and it sucks. It's something that just never panned out.
Yep.
Well, then after that, you got Mike Malarkey. How's
Take a take a look at what he did. He turned everything around.
he did and set
Yeah,
everything?
on roll. He had a great feel for culture. He was very loyal to his staff.
Very.
Say almost to a fault, but I'm telling you this: Mike Malaki understood the full picture of the dynamics, and he had a very uh, from being provided. His threshold was, I'm not going to compromise on what I know, what my staff and what my players need, and he would fight the fights. And along that way, sometimes you can ruffle feathers, especially when people are trying to take credit for stuff. You understand? We went from one of the worst teams in the NFL, the worst record, to what happens in a couple of years. Next thing you know, we were in the playoffs far, and we beat Kansas City in Kansas City. I mean, that doesn't happen accidentally. Unfortunately, I think egos got in the way. I think maybe we're a little intimidated by him, jealous by him. But you talk about someone that had the organization like Munchak back together.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, he had everybody. But then we had a little stretch at the end of his last year where we lost a couple games. Maybe we should have won. Went out to Frisco and lost the game to the Cardinals on that long trip where we stayed out on the West Coast.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was difficult,
Mhm.
especially we were favored by Vegas. What do they know? But they know something. And so again, it's one of those situations. If we were given grace, or if he had another year, we would have been, as Bum Phillips says, pounding on the door.
I think so. I think a lot of what we saw as fans is that the players loved playing for him. Jarrell Casey, you had Delaney Walker. When they won, I forgot what game it was that they won. It was on the last second. And you saw the players, you saw him hugging. All the players were going up to him. They wanted to win for him. They
Yep.
loved playing for him,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. He had a relationship with the guys, things that he did in the meeting rooms. He knew it was a long season. He knew it was you're there for a career. It's not what people think it is. They see Sunday, they see 3 hours, they
Mhm.
get a Sports Center update. They don't realize that we are with each other more than we're with our family. Mike got that.
Mhm.
And he really held players accountable. Call your family, get in relationships. I mean, he supported the players and the staff on so many different levels. And obviously, that didn't work out as well when he left.
Definitely. It's a shame. Like I said, as much as the players loved Mike, we did too, and I thought it was something. It's it's very unusual. It doesn't happen again. I remember when this happened when we went to Kansas City, won. Then and then the next week after that we played New England and lost. How people were like, how do you go from being bad to get into the playoffs and then firing your head coach?
Yeah.
How does that make sense? I said, I don't know. I don't
How many teams would have gone into New England?
exactly.
All those variables with who they had playing for them,
Exactly.
but we gave it our best shot. I mean, yeah.
Crazy, crazy times, crazy times.
If I ever get the chutzpah, I've had several people ask me about would I be willing to write a book. They get the real insight on a lot of these. I've given you more than I gave most,
Well,
but I mean the inside stuff is why a coach fails. It's not simply because of the X's and O's, and it's not just because of the win-loss record. There are sometimes players involved, variables that
mhm,
are outside the head coach's control.
definitely. Now, at one point after Mike Malarkey, obviously Mike Rabel comes in. At one point, we were plagued with injuries the last few years.
After I left,
After you left, I think there was one point, I think it was 2020, where the Tennessee Titans actually were the most injured team in the whole NFL. Now,
yep.
you said earlier,
Here's
you
the
know,
deal. The NFL did a study. I'll give you
uh,
to jump ahead what your question's going to be.
go ahead.
I left in 18. Already wrote the whole workout, the whole off season, etc. And we can get into that question. Why did I leave? But 19, my assistant took over.
Okay.
Tom Canavy, great dude, was the head long-time strength coach with the Eagles, assistant head strength coach at Minnesota. Great portfolio, great record for handling the athletes. I mean, Adrian Peterson credits Tom with even his career for his pro career. Okay.
And AP can still play, by the way.
Yeah, I'd hate to go try to block that dude. Oh, tackle. So with that, um, like I say, he took over
Mhm.
and didn't count 20 data because of what? COVID.
Yep.
But there was a very intensive, long time study. And I'll send you a copy of this study
Okay.
from 2006, 2020, 15-year study was considered. Ranked every team, the significance of injuries to performance to play. From 2006, 2020, Tennessee Titans were the best team. It actually says if a player wanted to stay healthy and perform at their highest level, they would have played for the Tennessee Titans. That was one of the summations in this study. And it was every single team, offense and defense. I'll send this to you. That was always one of the key things for me was to grade my performance each year. I would review every player. What could we have done better? What did we miss something here? Did we put a player out too early to return? I mean, once in a while, I'd say, did we hold a guy too long? Could you? That very rarely, obviously, happens. But we always tried to be right at the full healing, optimal, to complete the process, to get an athlete back to perform without getting re-injured. And so I didn't know they were going to do this study, but I get a copy of it. Someone sent it to me. And I think that was the benchmark of my career because it was always about perform better, but get guys healthy. And in fact, I still remember it was 1992, the first time the NFL Strength Coaches Award came out with Strength Coach of the Year. I was blessed. My peers voted me the strength coach of the year that year. And I still remember another strength coach kind of coming up and ribbing me. Says, yeah, coach. He goes, congratulations. But you know, our team, if we ever went in a lifting competition, we'd kill you. I said, I almost betrayed this coach, but I said to him, you know what? In the off season, maybe. I said, I'm not going to just give you that, but I will tell you this. If we do that competition after a game, I think we'd kill you because our guys would still be able to play and your guys on IR.
Yeah.
And he had the highest injured reserve list because he thought it was about building lifters. Okay. And in the room, I always said, my job is to use the lifting and training to make them optimal football players. It's not football players that are really lifters because each one of them had a different weakness. And so obviously that injury, and then all of a sudden they get that huge bug. They went at the record, I think, what, is it 22?
It was around that time frame, I think.
21 or 22. Mm-hmm. And then the next year, they tied their own record, or maybe it was one. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. And I still remember going up to the combine because I used to go up to the meetings every year. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I would, speak at one of the events. And I can remember one of the NFL officials, he said, hey, what's going on down there? Mm-hmm. Almost intimating that he wanted me to say it was, one department. Something was going wrong, whether it be athletic training or whether it be this new strength coach. And the strength coach who was there at that time, Frank Perry, phenomenal strength coach. The difference was his exposure to make a difference in the athletes' healing, their performance, mm-hmm. so squashed, so diminished by league control, league restrictions. Like I told you, how much time do you have with the athletes?
Barely any.
I used to get around those rules, skin in my teeth, but I was always able to get around it. And I'll give you an example of one way I got around one. You'll enjoy this. This goes way back to Gene Upshaw when he was head, and I had a great relationship with Gene. Mm-hmm. Gene would call me and talk about off season, what's going on, what changes they're looking at making. He knew I just think he respected the fact that how I went and loved my players. So I get a call, and no longer can football drills be used in the off season. You can run, you can train.
No football. Okay.
No specific, and you can't even have a football on the field.
Oh God.
Well, I didn't see that in the blueprint. So we're playing a game, and somehow they get a video of us playing this Powerball, and it used a football. Uh-huh. And so I get a call and say, by the way, just let you know, that rule goes into effect, this coming off season, you can't use a ball. So I hadn't violated it yet, but the rule was going to be put in place. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, 4 weeks into the off season, I get called. Let you know you're in violation. We're considering, what the penalty is going to be to the team. Now, believe me, if I got penalized or anything happened, I would have been fired. And so they went through the whole thing, and I'm just calm, cool, and collected. And I'm like, and they say, what do you have to say about that? I said, I think you ought to check your film. I said, we've been looking at it, and we see the same drills that you were doing last year. You're still doing it. I said, yes, I still am. Take a look at the ball. It's not a football. It's a rugby ball. And I bought a rugby ball. And to be that, I bought several rugby balls, but what instigated me even thinking of it, I had the Newcastle team from England had come to visit us that year in the off season to train this, and they gave me a rugby ball.
So there you go.
Went, bam, here we go. Oh, I still remember some of some people ticked off at the league office, like, okay, is that trying to skirt the rules? But I tell you, I can't tell you how many calls I got. Like, touche. That was awesome.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
No,
Quick thinking on your part. That's very, very good. I like that. That's funny. Um, well, coach, I don't want to hold you up any longer, but I do appreciate all the stories. I appreciate you answering the questions and taking your time on your birthday, just
uh,
on your birthday to come over here and talk with me. Do appreciate it. Like I said, the players loved you. It just shows you just how much of an impact you have made throughout your career. I mean, like I said, nothing but positive. And like I said, one question I do have is how did you do it, man? Going out there in those crazy conditions and still wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And let me tell you, I went to the Bengals when we were the number one seed a couple years ago. Um, and it was like 42 and I was free. Again, I live in Dallas and I was freezing. I had so much of those body warmers and those heat warm and you're out here in practice, pregame, and you're in shorts and a t-shirt and you're just doesn't phase you.
I don't know. My kids, my family talk about. It's adrenaline. It's the excitement of the game. Still remember the game we played against Kansas City.
Mhm.
It's before the game, like 9:30 in the morning. Everybody's just getting there, and I ran the stadiums of every team we played. The hardest one was Jerry Jones redid his stadium and trying to get through and over that wall. I mean, it was almost impossible, and I had to go under the. Okay, but we played Kansas City,
Mhm.
and that morning, I believe, and I'll send you a picture. It was -1 with a wind chill factor of -16.
Yeah.
And and one of our coordinators is talking to one of the coordinators for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I guess he was ribbing him saying, yeah, you're kind of soft down there in Nashville. This is Kansas City weather. I think you're going to have a problem. And I came out of the tunnel with my shorts, t-shirts, and topped the wall to go run the stadiums. And the coordinator told him, he goes, nah, I don't think it's really going to be a problem. And we ended up winning the game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't wear jackets.
Jeez.
And I still remember playing that cold. It was a cold night. The New England Patriots game. The night we lost it there, and it was like considered one of the third coldest playoff games.
Yeah.
I still brought my kettlebells. Went out before the game. Did a kettlebell routine. Jumped the wall and ran the stadiums.
Was that your like kind of your tradition you would
Yep.
do?
Make the players who weren't playing in that game travel with us. You would have your dress, non-dress players, and I'd make the non-dress players complete the workout. And it wasn't punishment. Some people think I looked at it that way, or like, oh, that was sending a message. You better be ready to. It was their. They didn't play Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do anything Sunday where the players have some of the biggest output.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, if you win the game, it's off. And so I didn't like the fact that my athletes would go that long without the body. So I would make them do kettlebells with me, run stadiums. Someday I asked Kevin Mawai, if you ever get Kevin Mawai on any of the players that ever weren't dressed, they hated it. But on the other hand, I know they loved it because we got one heck of a workout on game day. The guys who didn't play.
There you
go. All right.
Well, Coach, thank you so much. I do appreciate you. Loved having you on. We got to do it again.
Oh, God bless you and all your pods. I love the fact that you do this. It gets real information behind the scenes information out to the really true fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do the service for the team is invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and God bless.